Alright, engine's finally in, turbo's in, manifold's on. All the fuel lines are about to be made up from the back of the car. I've just got the old loom, checked it all, pushed it through, and making sure everything still fits. Changed manifold, but everything, I made the links last time I made the loom, so we had a bit to play with, and it's going to work. So don't have to adjust any connectors or nothing, so looking good. Keep cracking on. Melmo's got a bit more fab to do, and once he's done, oil it, run an oil filter, configure the computer again, and crank, and hopefully she fires first pop, and go from there, I guess. So this season, Kess has got a NASCAR tank for us to fit in the car. I don't know where he got it from, some weird corner of the internet.
Finally!
But being a NASCAR tank, it's designed to run a carburetor. So we've got one big line for the carby, and I've had to modify it, so that's now becoming our return. Obviously put stud pass-throughs for power, and then a new -6 feed from the in-tank pump that I'm fitting down in here. You can see there's a little cutout here where we're going to put the pump. Hopefully that sits down there nicely when we stuff it all with this foam, and then it doesn't move around too much. Nathan, to get the tank to fit, because obviously it's a huge tank, he's had to cut the end of the tank box down. So now I've put the blader, I had the mammoth effort of putting it back in earlier, which you missed on camera, to get it to fit. So the tank itself is squished down this end. So I don't know if you can see in here, it's a bit buckled. So I'm doing the best I can to try and get it to fit in there. I mean, when fuel does it, it's going to push itself and find a natural resting place, but I'll do the best I can with this, and then hopefully it doesn't leak. But we haven't tested it yet. Putting fuel in this tank for the first time, so some fresh 98 going straight into the tank. We've tested it with water, but it's always good to do a test with fuel. Not this NASCAR tank should leak. Alright, so last Friday we filled the tank with complete to the brim with fuel for the first time, and it sat probably a good 4 or 5 hours, and then we noticed it was leaking out the bottom. So been a bladed fuel cell from, I don't know, NASCAR from the 90s. The bladder's just tailed in the seams, and it's leaking, this corner actually, leaking, dripping out, and then running down the bottom and coming out the front of that tank. So we now have a day to figure out what we're going to do, and Debbie's got up to work today with a brand new plastic FIA tank. So now it's up to us to modify. I'm pulling out the insides of that to try and modify to fit into this, and then JP's going to try and figure out how we're going to mount this to the car now. So it's all on. We've got to get it running today.
We're just pretty much running through the final stages of the car at the moment, which means putting water in the cooling system and making sure that all of the lines, all of the plumbing, all of the aluminium that I've welded in the car actually holds fluid. We're about to do a pressure test just to double check that everything still holds under pressure, because obviously that changes when everything gets hot. And we'll check back with you in 10-15 minutes or so, and it'll either be good or bad, honestly. Try not to spill anything on the floor, otherwise I won't be able to tell if something's leaking or not.
Whoa!
See, it's holding a steady 10 psi there. Not falling back on itself, which is cool, which means you don't have a leak in the system. Also, the fact that there's no water under the car means there's not a leak too, so that's nice. Great success. We finally got to the end of finishing the engine bay of the AE86, and it's actually changed quite a bit since the original car was built. So when Adam built the original car from C's Garage, it was made with a mid-mount, V-mount intercooler and radiator setup, which did look pretty cool. But what we went for this time was making it easy for the guys that are looking after this car at the track to be able to work on it and service it and things like that. So what we did was we stood everything up. I think I've explained this in previous video. We've got the radiator and then the intercooler and the oil cooler all stood up in sync now, which leaves a lot of room down the front of the car to work on it, which meant that I could start building all the tanks and the swirl pots and the overflows and finishing all the intercooler setup for it. And that's exactly what I've done. So if we start from this side of the car, our hot side, as you call it, I've built a turbo manifold to a specification that Keisuke kind of requested in the first place. Then we've added a 50mm wastegate onto it to make sure we've got some pretty optimal boost control down there, along with 3-inch dump pipe that attaches up to the new exhaust system that I've built, and then his custom turbo as well. Now the custom turbo is T3, so the manifold's T3, which means it's relatively easy to bolt on and off the car without actually having to take all the manifold off and everything as well, which means everything's pretty serviceable on this side, which is cool. And then I've gone ahead and started building all the intercooler piping for it. So we've gone for a 2-inch elbow off the turbo, so it's a 2-inch outlet that steps up to 2.5 into a 3-inch core, and then the 3-inch core through to a 3-inch pipe, and then back down to 2.75, which creates a bit of a venturi through the throttle body to make sure that this plenum is seeing a nice pressure at all times, especially when you're on the throttle pedal. Having the car run a little bit more power, we decided to go up an intercooler pipe size this time, because the car lives a lot of its life up high in the RPM range, up high in the boost range as well, which meant we were trying to just get a little bit more flow through it. And also this engine, now that it's all forged and pretty serious, can do 300 plus kilowatt with some meth fuel. You know, like it's going to be pretty high horsepower motor compared to what it used to be. So everything's a little bit larger just to allow for that. So we'll see how we do with that when it comes to tune time. We fitted a gritty intake plenum, a genuine one, but the bolt hole size for it was actually for the 70mm throttle body. So we've had this drawn up by, funnily enough, Adam at C's Garage, this adapter plate, and Keisuke has then found a machinist to actually machine that up for us, and then I've welded it on, which means we're still running the stock standard non-turbo throttle body, which is the slightly larger throttle body. That kind of wraps up the intake side of things. It's got a 3-inch little knob jockey there, down to an Aeroflow carbon filter, and then moving to the cooling side of the car, I've built the radiator for it. The radiator is a Phoenix core that is actually originally suited to a Golf GTI, and I've cut the end tanks off of it and made new end tanks, and then also made new positioning for in and out. So yeah, down here. And what I've done is incorporated the swirl pot into the actual coolant neck off the side of the head down here, which not only keeps everything nice and tight to work on, but when I'm putting something together, I quite like the aesthetic of having everything engine related in a line. I don't like having lots of tanks everywhere and all on the sides of the engine. It's quite nice having the open space. So yeah, I've kept the coolant swirl pot nice and tight with the motor, runs under the CAS, and then the swirl actually loops around clockwise and into here, and it's actually quite effective. I did some testing with this before I finalized it to make sure that it's going to do what I wanted it to do. Originally I would have liked to have brought the swirl up a bit further so it does get a little bit more of that air out of the coolant, but unfortunately with how tight we've got with clearances with where the motor sits in regards to the bonnet and where this has to sit in regards to coming into the highest point of the radiator, this is the perfect spot for it. So that should do its job nicely, which would be cool. I've just pressure tested it to make sure that it doesn't leak, and it doesn't leak, so that's kapai. And then I've just done a little overflow bottle down here as well. This is a 2.5-inch overflow bottle with a nice spin-on aluminium cap. And that actually attaches to the radiator off a bracket as well, which means that you can take the radiator and the coolant overflow out all as one, which keeps everything serviceable, easy to remove, less lines to take off when the car needs to be pulled apart because it's had a prang and we need to replace a radiator or something. And then coming over here, there's lots of little small fabrication bits in this engine bay. You know, we had to remount the remote thermostatic oil sandwich plate. We had to incorporate a blow-off valve this time. We had to incorporate the fuel pressure regulator somewhere where it was actually going to fit and you were actually going to be able to get all the lines on and off. We had to completely make remote clutch master reservoir and modify a clutch master cylinder so that this big gritty plenum can be run this time. And it's all come together pretty nicely. It's got a nice little catch can I've built here out of 1.5 mil aluminium, and it's got a baffle inside for the filter so that you're not trying to push oil up through the filter, and that sits there nicely. And then I've attached the fuel pressure regulator to the side of that, which actually turned out pretty cool. Aesthetically, I guess, you know, nice dimple dyed plate up the front which attaches to the headlight mounting points, and then just a couple in the middle to keep it nice and secure. Other than that, it's a pretty basic little SR20 setup, aside from the motor being, you know, pretty serious now. It's about my bit.
Okay. Got into there. That just went down. That's right. Probably needs a bit down there. It's going to be a bit smoky. Shining nice and looking. Right, all good. I think you were there next to us. Remember he threw the rockets?
Yep.
Yeah,
I was there.
No, I just took a shit. Right, I will go. Right, it's the aluminium. I had a picture of it. Let's just make sure it is right. It's the aluminium.
You gotta wind the fucking end on, bro.
No, that's alright.
Alright, so new tank's in, all the lines have been made. Only had to just one line and remake it. The wiring worked as well, so swapped over the pump from the other pump of the tank into this one. Last thing to do is make the vent, which we'll do last. Dan's about to chuck some fuel in it.
Yeah,
So-
I just want to ask Kes, why am I doing this?
Private joke.
Alright, where am I putting it in?
Fuel,
We're going.
put it in.
Take 2.
Yeah, fuel tank 2.0.
Apparently, old man bladder didn't work.
Yeah.
And this one has safe in the title, so it's safe. Fuel safe. Safe.
Shape in the title.
Oh, look, you're spilling it,
Fuck,
man.
you're squirting it everywhere.
Sorry. You shake more than how many times?
Anything. I mean, it's masturbating. Any more than 3 shakes and it's masturbating? Oh, you're wasting all the fuel, man. Liquid gold.
Yeah, you want to
Jump
hold?
or spill it?
You want to hold the funnel for me?
Go. I think you're going to spill.
No, not too bad.
Alright. No leaks there. These are pretty good. No, it's good.
Nothing was leaking last time.
No, it's only him, this line here. Him I took off, and obviously that bit.
You should probably unhook the surge pump and fill that tank up.
Oh, yeah, you mean the main?
The surge is probably full.
I did that last week. I think it's full because we did it last week.
Yeah, we heard it.
It sounded full then.
Well, I wasn't here. I was on holiday.
No, just got a bonus in, so I'm having a weekend away in Prague.
Doesn't have spark plugs. Wait, should I put some oil down the fucking pistons?
Oh, number one's already got some.
Why is that?
Because when I filled, I was like, oh, that's not the right hole.
Tell me when he's done. Ready?
Sort of. What was that?
Well, you built the motor, so if anyone should be worried about sounds that sound like that.
Yeah. What the fuck was that? It was Tony being a dick.
Cool. That banging noise.
We need a jump pack, eh?
Yeah.
once it gets oil
But it's not going to
pressure,
start anyway, we're just cranking over to get oil pressure. Usually you just crack the line up and look at it
Are
come
you
out.
going to get crazy or are you going to put a battery up pack
We just
on
need
it?
to put the jump pack on it, because otherwise it's not turning over fast enough. It'll take you 900 years to get oil pressure.
Okay.
We still got one pack left
Ready?
out. Yeah, go for it. It's not picking over that fast, eh?
Whoa, pressure's going up. Got 1 psi.
Yeah! Cranking for turbo oil. Keep going. We've got football.
Stop.
That's all it is.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Can't see anything. We're turning over really slowly. Okay, keep going. About 80 degrees. Okay. Crank that. Crank it high, crank it low. Turn it around and make it go. Hiya. That's retarding it. Yep. Yep, there we go. Okay, bring it back, say 10 degrees. That's pretty close. Yep, that'll do. Sweet, we can fire it on that and I'll adjust it.
Alright, you can tell me when I'm ready.
I don't know when you're ready, you need to decide that for yourself. I'm ready. Are you ready?
You guys all ready?
Yeah. Okay, go. Crank at the engine.
Starting up the shield.
Maybe you got that cold start, so there's the fueling probably a bit out.
You ready?
Just kick it in the fucking teeth.
It's at 360 kPa. I just need to drop it down to about 340. Yeah, it's going all good. Just watch the temperatures. We're getting the engine up to temp. It's got a thermostatic valve in the oil thing. So yeah, we're just waiting for the oil temp to get up for that valve to open, and then we can hang up just down a little bit. So what we're looking for is that there's fuel pressure expected based on the base pressure that we set in the thing, in the car. And so we're just adjusting the fuel pressure to equal exactly what the fuel pressure is expected, so at least when the ECU is doing its calculations in the background, it's making exactly what it should be. Running! Holy fuck! Right, so car started. everything's looking good. We've had no leaks. We had a bit of a leak obviously from the fuel tank, as we know. We've got a new fuel tank in there that's fixed. Gone through everything, fuel's all good, there's no leaks there. The oil, we've got no leaks anywhere from the engine. Coolant's all looking good, everything is looking good. So we've done a heat cycle in the car, which is just get it up to temp, make sure the fans are cycling on and off. Because it has the external oil cooler, there is a thermostatic valve in the line, so we needed to make sure that that got up to 80 degrees for the oil temp. So that opened to fill the oil cooler up. So now we just need to go through, check all the levels, let it cool down a bit. So check the oil, check the water. Then we'll do one more heat cycle just for safety's sake, check everything, then we'll get it on the dyno and we'll start doing some a run-in. So just pretty much, low to medium RPM, low to high load, without doing any full pulls or anything like that. Just to run the engine and make sure all those bearings, all the rings will seat nicely in the motor. Then off the dyno, oil change, cut the oil filter open, make sure everything's looking nice and tidy in there, and then we'll get it back on for the final tune. So we don't have much longer to go, so we're on the finishing stretch, so everything's looking good.